Hey, how's it going tonight, Mark?
I'm good. How are you? I'm really tired.
I know. I haven't considered wearing sunglasses tonight because of the fact that I thought my eyes looked so tired. I thought, and we do have a topic that would represent and be cool with, sunglasses.
Oh,
I know. It would have been cool, but
you don't think we could have put suits on?
I know, but that leads us to tell you about our topic tonight, which is essentially Hi, Melissa.
Hi,
which we're going to be talking about UFOs and aliens,
stuff like that. Yeah.
But hey, before we get started with that, let's break for a quick advertisement.
Yeah,
about the big event next weekend out in Humber, Wisconsin. And I tell you what, there is still rooms out there available that if you wanted to, Humber, Wisconsin has this interesting hotel, bar, and food. They serve food.
Yep.
Very aged, antique,
1800s.
Historic 1800s hotel with spirits in there. And what an opportunity to come join several Minnesota teams as we go in and do an investigation at this hotel. So, hey, this is really an opportunity. There is a fee if you want to investigate, a smaller fee for the investigation, but you can spend the whole night in the hotel.
Spooky.
And if you are interested in partaking in a paranormal investigation in a haunted hotel out in Humber, Wisconsin, just a couple hours east of the cities, let me know tonight. Send me a message, whatever you can do, and we'll get you in contact with the guy who's selling the tickets, so to speak.
I think there's 2 rooms left from what he was saying.
2 rooms left.
2, yeah.
So we're getting down there. But this is a great opportunity. If you ever thought about it, I don't think there's been a better opportunity that's been offered here recently. So that's our advertisement. And now let's get to talking about...
Hey, Russ.
Hey, Gina, Tammy,
yeah,
Wanda,
guys.
And Paul. Excellent. We appreciate you all coming on tonight. And I tell you what, I'm going to start this out, I think, just telling you a short blurb. Now, UFOs are called UFOs because they're unidentified.
Right.
That's the key. It's unexplained. We really don't know all the details, one way or the other. And one thing we're not here to do tonight is to define UFOs or to pretend like we have all this great knowledge about UFOs. We're here to tell our stories. And that's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Because that to me is what really is testimonies of what we've experienced is better than reading any old science book about it. And but here we go. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
So this is the other night. A couple nights ago, I'm laying in bed. I wake up. It's 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. That's not unnatural for me. I a lot of times wake up in the middle of the night. But I wake up, and a lot of times there's a reason. And for maybe the 3rd time in the 8 years that I've lived in town, I hear this humming noise. And it permeates the air all over the place. I mean, it's just a hum. And we're talking, it's 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And this ain't a vehicle drive by because it just doesn't stop. And it goes on and on and on. And finally, like I do each time, it's been about 3 times, I crawl out of bed. I have to shut the outside light off because I'm in my damn underwear, and I'm walking outside and just taking it in. And that hum is all the way around me. It's ridiculous.
It's pretty funky.
Yeah, it is. And so, but that's not it. The other part about it is that the sound outside is so off center. And the way I explain it, it's just like the air is compressed down. And so as I'm standing there, I hear sirens. And I know these sirens are probably like a mile away. And I'm like, why can I hear those sirens? That's weird. And I hear a vehicle driving on a road far off. And I'm like, normally I wouldn't hear that. And I know there's some weather things that go on that create such an atmosphere. And more than likely that might be what it is. But I lay back down in my bed after a while, and I just got this feeling that there's this big, get both hands, because this big mothership in the air above the city. And it's a big one, and it's pushing the sound right back down into the earth and creating that weird sound phenomena. But maybe that's not it. But if this was a factory humming, would I not hear that?
Normally, yeah, whenever they're in operation.
You think you'd hear it all the time. The third time since I've been here, that's it. But strange and unusual things occur a lot. In the last year and a half, I would say we've picked up quite a few unusual EVPs.
Right.
That they're talking about ships and stuff like that. I think we'll even play one or two tonight yet.
Yeah, why not?
And and EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, a voice that's talking to you. It doesn't have a body. It's an estranged voice that you hear and you don't know why. It shows up on your audio recorders, etc. And it's just crazy. That's all I got to say about it. And I think we should really kick off, because that's just me kind of starting up the show, allowing a few people to get on. But I see we got 10 views already. Hey, Mark, why don't you kick it off, and let's talk about that lady we talked to up north.
Right, so, in doing this, we get to talk to a bunch of people all over the place and hear their stories. And at the Para-Unity conference this last year, I was sitting there, and this lady came up, and she mentioned that her husband was at the next booth, which was, well, the next one, 2 over or whatever, and it was a UFO show, Alien Highway.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's so enthusiastic about his UFO sighting, and he's just chatting it up with the guy over there. And she said, I'm not going to get him away from there, so I'm just going to kind of roam around. And she's like, but I have a story about a UFO as well. I'm like, well, tell me. So she said she was driving. This was near Duluth.
Yeah.
And so she was driving kind of up on the hill with her son, and her car stalled out. Lights flickering.
The old car stall.
That's right. The old car stall. And she looks up, and she sees this UFO above her that's about the size of like a football field. That's pretty bloody big.
It's huge.
Yep, and she was trying to distract her son because, yeah, huge. Distract her son because she didn't want him to get freaked out. But she was nervous. But she described it a little bit. It was kind of a gray in color. She could see like the cockpit. Well, anyways, the thing took off. Her car started and she went. But then she also told the story about her, what her husband saw. And it was a ship that, I don't remember the description of it anymore, but she described it. But anyways, so he said as he was watching it, then it took off over Lake Superior.
Wow.
But the real neat thing is the way he described that ship was exactly, it matched what her mother saw in the 1950s. Saw the same.
Multi-generational experience.
Right. So I thought that was pretty cool.
That's amazing that they would both experience it. And I think both of us have heard stories. And I know even back in my old town by Glencoe, actually down the road, Lester Prairie, Minnesota, back when I was maybe in high school or something, there was a lady and her daughter that was driving along, and all of a sudden the car stopped, and all of a sudden they realized there was a light and like a ship above them, and they just sat there on the country road for quite a while till it kind of dissipated, went away.
Right.
Then the car was able to start back up and drive off. That was in the local papers, Lester Prairie, Minnesota.
Well,
and hey, if anybody has any little bits of stories they want to talk about on here, feel free to share any of your UFO alien stories in the comments here, because I'm sure everybody would love to hear about that as well.
Heck yeah.
And we'll mention it too. If you put something on there, we'll make mention of it. But that's not the only story.
That's a neat one. And
from northern Minnesota.
Right. So another one was we were actually interviewing. My voice is getting scratchy. Excuse me. Interviewing a gentleman up in northern Minnesota about Bigfoot sightings.
Right.
A lot of interesting stories from that. And he's like, hey, I've got a UFO story. So do you remember what year it was from?
It was probably, I would have to go. And we have a video on this one on YouTube of this interview.
Right, yeah. So him and a friend of his were standing on the main street, and this craft just glided down the street.
Right down Main Street.
Yeah, right down Main Street. And they said they could see through it, and they even saw the pilots.
Yeah, it had windows, and they could see the aliens sitting inside the unidentified
crazy
flying object.
Makes me think of that, how Wonder Woman's invisible plane was, where she's sitting in the cockpit flying along, this invisible plane. That's what it kind of reminded me of. But
we have, Melissa says, my dad, brother, and a buddy saw one. They flashed a flashlight at it, and it was coming down at them.
Yeah.
They were kind of teasing it, maybe. You never know. You snap your flashlight on a couple, you might have said something really crazy. I don't know.
Like, hey.
But yeah, Steph said a lot of the experiences that people have are very similar. People can relate to these types of stories because a lot of people know people that had this experience.
Or yeah, like in the families, like she's saying that, they're seeing the same kind of thing.
And it never stops. On my phone, I don't know, it's going to take me too long to find it, but I'm on the UFO national website, and I can go on there and I can look up-to-date UFO sightings.
Oh, yeah.
And that, I love that thing. I don't sit and stare at it every darn night or anything, but I kind of like to go on there and say, anything happen in Minnesota, Wisconsin, South Dakota? That's really neat. So, yeah, that type of thing is very exciting to a lot of people, and that's why this topic came up, and that's why we're doing it tonight. And you never know when you're going to have an experience. What was it, a week and a half ago? We were at Faribault, and it was towards the end of the night. It's pitch black out. Nice starry night. Beautiful night.
It was a beautiful
night.
Oh,
it was nice.
Cold,
but beautiful. And at sunset, we saw this kind of light floating it was in the eastern sky at that time.
Right.
East of us. And we're like, wow, what is it? It's a plane? It's going way too slow. It must be a drone. And it kind of looked like one.
It did.
And so this is about an hour and a half later, and this time it's directly to the south of us, and it looked like 4 lights on it, but it had one colored light, so we knew it was probably something that was, identifiable. But I'll tell you what, that thing sat in one spot for a very long period of time. And I'm like, what the world is that? And all of a sudden we're all looking at it, and it slowly starts coming towards us. And this darn thing it was pretty darn big for a drone. That's all I got to say about it. It was huge.
Yeah, it wasn't small.
And it just moved so slow and so mysteriously. And the reason I even bring up this story, because we have a pretty good feeling it was a drone. But in the audio that we had audio recorders running, in the audio, right after I asked about it, I heard a supernatural voice say, Mothership. I'm like, wait, what? No, I didn't hear it at the time, so I didn't hear it till later. But we have a pretty good feeling it was a drone, but how weird.
So weird, yeah.
How weird sometimes.
you were standing there and you're like, what the heck is that? And you're like, you're pointing off. And yeah, it was this light just stayed in one spot for a while. And
it just didn't move.
yeah.
And the reason, well, maybe, yeah, let's talk about it. The reason that we were kind of excited about the idea of seeing stuff in the sky was because of the fact that in the past, in this area, in this huge valley, people had been parked up on the top of this hill and said that they saw aliens, grays, more than likely,
Yeah.
down in this valley, just appear like they were there. And like the fog rising up.
Yeah.
And I just absolutely fell in love with that story and was so excited to go down there because I had a dream like that back on the farm where I woke up and I had heard something and I felt like a staticky feeling. And I got up and I went to the window and I looked out the window and there was a big like tank, I think it was a tank or an airplane floating along. And after it went by, all of a sudden these grays popped up all over the yard, like probably like 50 plus, maybe 100, I don't know how many. At this point I can exaggerate. Nobody's really keeping track.
Like cockroaches.
Yeah, they just popped up all over, and they were all over in this grassy lowland, just like what's in that story in Faribault, Minnesota. And they, in this case, they actually came up to the house. And, I was like, hey, hi, don't move, And I was standing like behind a curtain. And the grays just suddenly appeared in the house. And they were moving about the house. But as long as you stood really still, kind of hold your breath a little bit, it was the movement that they would identify with. They didn't identify with the heat signature or any other electromagnetic energy, blah, blah, blah. They were watching for movement. That's what they were trying to see. And if you moved, then they knew you were there.
Did they eat your food and drink your beer?
They didn't do anything like that.
Okay,
It was
that's good. I mean, I thought it was rude they came into the house without
yeah,
asking.
I'm a friendly fella. I fry up hamburgers. I don't care.
Yeah,
I mean,
why not? Hamburgers for all.
But there was, the fact that the stories were so similar.
Yeah.
To my dream, it was just very similar.
Very neat, yeah.
And as long as I'm talking about those dreams, and I believe that aliens can communicate with dreams. I've had a number of them now where I've kind of had an alien visit. I wouldn't say I was taken anywhere per se, but I've had a full storyline about aliens. And really, I ain't huge on, I'm into the supernatural things. I'm not huge on the alien aspect of it.
Aliens is a kind of a bonus. I think.
Yep.
Yeah, interesting to listen to stories about and see things
and just experience, and it's
yeah.
the unknown. But they also showed me in a different dream how they came in and out of the water. They showed their ship going down into the water. And I remember thinking a lot about it. I'm like, gosh, is there a big hole in the bottom of that little 100-acre lake that's over there? I don't think there's a hole there. I think that obviously the ships and whatever's inside of them can not disintegrate, but they can, just like your rosary at that time.
Oh, yeah.
They can break down
Dematerialize.
to dematerialize the smaller molecules, go down into the earth, and then rematerialize. And I am absolutely confident that there's something to that effect. Because, they are much like Bigfoot.
Yeah.
They're kind of there. They got their own dimension, but yet they're in this dimension, but yet they can be perceived as being in their dimension.
Yeah.
That's a lot of dimension talk, but I think you got the idea. So that's really interesting. That whole phenomena of how they move about and we don't see them and we do see them. That's kind of weird.
It is.
And like I say, I don't want to spend the whole night talking about dream after dream after dream.
Dreams.
But that phenomena of up in northern Minnesota, nothing more I like better than to sit down and just listen and talk and write down notes about these guys who have actually physically seen. Now, I remember one time we were sitting on this gravel road, and I ain't gonna lie, there's probably some drinks involved. And me and another fella or two were sitting there, and there was a light. And it was going back and forth because there was telephone lines going all the way down. And it just was going, you knew it wasn't a plane.
Right.
It is a drunk pilot for sure, if it was. Whoa!
Watch this, guys.
Hey, well, Melissa's got something here. Okay, what's that say on there?
She says, you guys are military. What do you think of Area 51? What can you tell us about aliens there? Nothing more than what anybody else knows, I think. I mean...
Yeah, like I say, and my focus kind of wanted to be on what we experienced more personally. But the little bit I could probably tell you, I mean, they've interviewed people. They interviewed one of the guys there, one of the sergeants, who said that, like that night, you would see aliens on the post. They would actually come out from wherever, and they'd allow them to kind of roam about the place a little bit. And it's hard to say. I haven't been on there, but there is plenty of people that are in the military now, because this is really becoming more and more out in the public.
It has been.
It's out there. It used to be so hammered down, but now they're talking about it on all these old clips of the planes. And the guy said, I just saw one the other day with, was it Buzz? Yeah, one of those guys. And he talked about things they saw up in space.
Right, yeah, and on the moon and stuff, yeah.
That's a lot of crazy stuff. I mean, we could just have thousands. No, absolutely not. I love the questions.
Yeah, if they let us in, we'd go.
Yeah,
why not?
And if we go, we're taking Melissa with, and we're going to send her down that chute that goes down about 18 miles under the earth.
Oh, yeah, that chute, yeah.
The chute.
Usually come out of that.
There's always a chute.
Without a problem.
Yeah, because there's no problem there. But no, well, the guy that we were with, remember that? The guy that we talked about, the guy that told us the story about the alien ship that came through Big Fork, Minnesota, right down Main Drag.
Yeah.
He also said he knew a guy, or wasn't best buddies with, but there was a scientist that he followed quite closely, and it was down in Arizona, would you say? Where was it? Do you remember the state?
I think so. That sounds right.
Where there was exactly that, a chute that goes way down in the earth. And they went down there, and they realized that in the caverns, it appeared like there was some type of life down there. So they actually had a Marine squad, and this doctor and a few other people go down there and follow some of this, and they actually ran into grays down in the earth.
Well, yeah, because they're saying that's where you find grays a lot is.
Down in the earth.
Yeah, interesting.
That's kind of that's a bit of a frightening concept, a little bit, but that would coincide with the dream where the ship literally drops into the lake. People out in the ocean, people have seen that hundreds of times, where all of a sudden they'll see an unusual light and it just disappears down into the ocean, or a large lake or something. So this phenomena is too real.
It is.
And did anybody else have any other questions out there about UFOs? I mean, we're not experts, but maybe you have a short story you want to tell.
And while that's going on, let's talk about the ones we see up north when they're. We don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Unidentified. But oftentimes when we're out looking for Bigfoot, we'll see odd lights.
Flashes,
like lights sweeping the woods, like the one we saw. Oh yes, Julie, we'll get to that in a second here. I was trying to think of that story that you had told, But the one time we were walking along, it's like you were below, like, say, a bluff with a turnaround, and it's at night, and then you see the car, as they come to the top of the bluff, it turns, and you see the lights sweep the trees. That's what it looked like, but that's not possible because all of it's that way is woods.
Yeah, I don't know how.
More woods, and maybe a lake farther down. But no high spots for a car to turn around, and same place where we had things pacing us in the woods that we couldn't see.
Yeah, because that is the phenomenon of it. Not only did we have the light, but after the light was there, we heard physically the presence of something moving parallel through the woods as we walked. Right?
Right. And so Julie was saying when we investigated her place,
right?
She had told me about an experience her grandma and her had.
Okay.
Did you hear that?
Why don't you tell that one in a shortcut vision, and I'll tell the other one here.
So she mentioned, she was 4 years old and looked out into the yard and saw this UFO just hovering there. So I don't remember a lot of the story. Sorry, Julie, but her grandma came and she asked her grandma to come and look. So her and her grandma were able to see this thing floating out in the yard, this UFO. So I don't know. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
It's neat that her grandma acknowledged it. So
right. Again, multiple generations have experienced in the same area.
Right.
Gina says, I have seen the Marfa lights, light orbs that show up almost every night in this one area in Texas. From the internet, a little bit about the Marfa lights, also known as the Marfa ghost lights. That'd be down our route.
It would be, yeah.
Observed near U.S. Route 67 on Mitchell Flat east of Marfa. They have gained fame as onlookers have attributed them to paranormal phenomena such as ghosts or UFOs.
Interesting.
That's amazing. All right, now we got to make a road trip. Marfa, Texas.
There's also a forest in Romania that has a whole lot of supernatural and UFO things. It's supposed to be haunted as all heck. I think we should take a road trip.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think we could do nothing but road trips. And we'd never run out of things. Places to go.
And things to see.
Yeah, it would just be endless. One of my favorite stories that I heard, and I just heard this one not too long ago, was about the 1941 crash. It was a UFO crashed, and it was down in the southern states as well. And in the crash, apparently the UFO had several aliens in it who were near death. And I love this story specifically. I don't love the fact that anybody was hurt or died.
But they crashed.
Yeah, but they did crash. But the interesting part about the 1941 crash is that the people that went to the site had an awareness that came to them that the aliens wanted last rites. And they quickly contacted a Baptist minister. And he came to the site and administered last rites to what appears, the stories differ a little bit, but about 3 of the alien, I don't want to call them aliens. We'll just leave it at that. 3 aliens. He administered the last rites to them. And that is an amazing story to me because of the fact that it kind of shows and tells the story that the Heavenly Father is not only our Heavenly Father, but He is the Heavenly Father of other universes as well. And that's just kind of heartwarming and nice to know. Because, a lot of people are kind of afraid of aliens.
Yeah.
I know that there was, and I watched this not too long ago, so supposedly there's 5 primary alien nations from 5 different areas. And some are nice.
Some aren't so nice.
Some aren't so nice. Some have been very practical in their efforts to keep the world that we live in free from destroying ourselves through nuclear type things. And I know I've told this story a number of times, but it was the U.S. and it was during the Cold War, and it was getting hot. Things were getting real. And the U.S. put their nukes at a certain location on alert, on high alert. And every one of the nukes, the missiles, was all on a different electrical system. They all had their own electrical system. And so there was no way that anybody could take down the power grid and not some of the missiles go. And I'm sure this place still exists today. So all of them are on high alert, and everybody's just freaking out. And all of a sudden, this ball of light appears over the top of where all these nuke missiles are sitting. And one by one, every single one of those missile stations shut down. They powered down. Boom, boom, boom. Every one of them. The whole thing was shut down.
That was probably during the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yeah, I bet it was.
The Russians were coming over with their nuke weapons to Cuba.
And that's an easy one to look up because I found it pretty easy. It is on quite a few stories on the internet, but it's one of my favorites.
So I want to make an observation. We're talking about aliens, obviously, and a lot of people think they're super advanced, but all I can think about right now is they crash. They crash those ships a lot, it sounds like. They're bad drivers too. So if you're going to be afraid of aliens, you probably should be afraid of getting hit by one of their ships when they crash it. I don't know. Yeah. That's just silly thoughts. But
It is. But I think that they have tried with many people to communicate with different types of languages, whether it be binary or this and that, and have sent messages. Think of all those fields out in Europe where you have the wheat fields that have designs and
oh yeah, that happens here too.
Yeah, potential communications in them. But they've got technologies that obviously we don't. I don't know. Do we have some that they don't? I don't know.
Possibly.
But I think for the most part, if I had to assume anything, I would assume that most of them are fairly protective of the Earth. And
yeah. Rita says maybe they ran out of fuel. Maybe they did.
That could be.
I could just see them flying through the air and just misjudging the height they're at.
And that's just the thing. I don't really think they utilize any kind of fuel per se. Like in the dream where they were holding up that giant piece of airplane and whatnot, and it was just sitting there floating in air, just moving along. Like it kind of reminded me of those big balloons at the Thanksgiving Day parade. Those big giant balloons. It was like a huge, heavy plane, and it was just floating. And it was like they were sending me the message saying, "Hey, we don't really need anything to move stuff around. We'll move it around all we want, And the capabilities are way beyond us, I'm sure. Melissa says, if you met an alien, would you be afraid of them? Whoa.
So I'm thinking...
I'll let you answer that one, Mark.
Well, I was going to say most people
thirsty.
that get taken like that don't even know how they got there. So I'm pretty certain you wouldn't really be afraid right away. Because they just do their little mind trick on you.
I think so,
and then spirit you off to get probed and whatnot. I don't know. I don't know. Let's go meet some aliens and find out.
Yeah, I think the chaos of fear that is in one's mind would be more of an issue than the actual experience of meeting an alien.
I think I'd invite them to coffee, and then we could chat it out. You don't need to probe me. I mean, you probed other people, right? Just come in and hang out and chat.
And we got a location that we intend to go to this spring, perhaps, if we can get up there. And this is a location where UFOs have been seen quite a bit. And we intend to spend a good part of a night up there.
Yeah.
Hanging out, lawn chairs, and I watch the occasional shows where people they just think to them. A thought goes out. It doesn't require this giant, big telescope and
We should get a telescope though.
we should get a telescope.
That'd be fun.
I know that would be fun. I actually have a telescope.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay.
But people have gone out into these areas where UFOs have been seen on a fairly regular basis. There's quite a few around the United States. Skinwalker Ranch,
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
and several other locations where people have seen. I think there's one out in Wisconsin too, another similar ranch where odd things go on. They see strange lights all the time, but people go out there and they just use their mind as a group to think about a communication. I don't know what they say. They just sit there and think about welcome or
Hey,
whatever.
Come on.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, light or more, will appear in the sky, and it can't be explained.
Well, one phenomena that we experience when we're at investigations is as we're sitting there talking about things, the spirits will come out or come up and kind of join us.
Yeah.
Maybe it's kind of like that. Maybe you just sit around and talk about them. Hey, and give it a shot.
Yeah, it's crazy. But hey,
We're past time.
we're past time as always. I just like the idea of having this opportunity to visit with people about that, having a little back and forth, hearing a few stories from other people, and just because we're gonna shut this down shortly doesn't mean that you can't send us more messages on this topic, and maybe we share them on another.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, because this is going on and on every Tuesday night, 7 o'clock, and it's going to go on for a while. And I'll tell you my last UFO story. Hello, Heather. Glad to see you. Glad to see you made it. This is a great, great fun time out here talking about UFOs and aliens. And my last one was another dream I had because I just noticed that in my notes and I didn't even mention it. We're going to wrap up with this story. All right, I'm having a dream and I'm brought to supernaturally to another location, an alien nation per se, another planet. I don't know even how it's possible. I'm not going to even try to explain the possibilities of how that would happen. Or either that or they were able to provide the vision for me. And they showed me their planet. And they showed me the houses on the planet. And all of they weren't houses per se, but the places where they lived were translucent. They were squarish, like boxes, so to speak. But from my angle, all you could see was the edging of the boxes. As far as seeing straight at them, all you saw was the actual ground of the planet, whatever planet it was. Wasn't given that information. But the idea of having translucent homes and other things like that to keep themselves private from other organizations. And in that same dream, they had used young children, and they would have things attached to them like you might have at the doctor's office that measured their heartbeat and different things, I suppose. But they, I can't say they were earthling children, but youthful looking things, because they were much more sensitive to the energy and whether or not something might be coming towards them. That might be an enemy or whatever it may be. But just like our children are a lot more sensitive to supernatural energy on Earth, it was the same case on that planet. And they monitored the children to see if anything bad was coming.
Interesting.
And that's my wrap. That's the last story.
So one other thing though, so next week, what is it, the 12th, we need to come up with a topic if you have something in mind.
Yeah.
Because we haven't come up with anything yet, have we?
We haven't we?
I mean, we usually talk about it ahead of time, but
I think we should do a question-answer type thing one of these weeks.
I think so.
Where
too.
we just allow the audience to ask whatever questions they want to.
Yeah, we can just,
And we just sit back and then start telling stories, testimonies about things that we've experienced.
Yeah.
That's a possibility. If you got any other topic ideas that you want us to talk about, I know.
Because we're not lacking for stories. I'm just like, I figure if you guys have one, we can just toss it out.
Right. And it's about time to talk about another investigation.
Yep.
I know the other Russ that visits us online here, he's mentioned a few times, hey, why don't you talk about the investigation out by his place in Wisconsin? And that was a great investigation. So maybe we talk about that one and one other.
Yeah.
We each pick one.
We can
you
pick
talk
one.
about one, I talk about another. We go back and forth.
Sounds good.
Let's do something like that. And what's that? Think of your questions now. Absolutely. Maybe go over a piece of equipment. Hey, that's something we definitely talked about.
We did talk about that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like
great idea, Heather.
We could even do it all at once, or pieces, yeah.
Yep.
Pick one and
Shapeshifters, Melissa said. That's I've never actually experienced them shift, but I've experienced them. Maybe we could do a whole show just on translucent, unknown entities.
Yeah.
That'd be a good show. But don't forget, on the 19th, we are going to skip that Tuesday, and we're going to do live Wednesday night from Annandale.
Yeah, from the Thayer.
Yes.
And that'll be fun.
The Haunted Thayer Hotel and Eatery.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a great time.
Great food.
Yep, great food. We're going to go eat dinner and...
Great food, great spirits.
It's a beautiful place. It's wonderful.
It is.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for listening tonight. It's been an awesome time.
Thank you. Yeah.
Chatting it up here about UFOs and aliens. And same time next week.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Good night, everybody.
All right, good night.